I recently did a video that talked about the pros and the cons of having sex outside of marriage. And in that video, which you should go watch because I used to bring it up in my college classes, and we talked about all these cons of having sex outside of marriage, not the least of which was that it's a sin, fornication. You can go to hell. But when I addressed the video, I said, let's pretend you're not a Christian. Let's take that one out of there. But we cannot pretend that that doesn't exist. So if no other cons exist, it is a sin to do anything that goes against God. But what I did is I talked about the getting pregnant, the potential of getting pregnant, the stress that it takes, the potential for getting the sexual STD, the potential for having a child, the female in particular feeling used and feeling no commitment that comes with it. So there were a lot of cons, and the only pro in college courses we could come up with were that, well, it feels good. So I put that challenge out there for anyone who wishes to email me and let me know if there are anything else I can think of to do so. So I got an email from someone, and I wanted to comment on that right away because it tend to be the ones that I hear from others as well. But basically, and I want to read to make sure, this viewer, and thank you viewer so much for writing. It's as close as I can get to the college classes, which were so much fun to have this direct interaction with each other. But this gentleman says, and he calls himself John Doe, so I know it's a gentleman. He says, pros to having sex outside of marriage are to assess sexual compatibility, number one. Number two, he says, to learn to be a better lover. Number two. Number three, to identify sexual problems or dysfunction of the individual. And number four, to reduce stress, which he says is associated with achieving climax regardless of marital status. And then number five, enhanced emotional connection resulting from having sex. So I was like chomping at the bit to answer these. It's so exciting. But before I did that, I decided to call my dear friend, Dr. Jessica McLeish. She's a Christian sex therapist. So she 100%, that's her job, which we always talked about how we are very similar because people come to me for relationship issues, and I also help them with their sex lives, and people come to her for their sex lives, and it's always about relationship. So you cannot separate relationship and sex. You cannot. You can try to, but then that goes back into the point of this video when we're talking about pros and cons. So if we want to talk about the first two on this list here, was to assess sexual compatibility and to learn to be a better lover. So what is sexual compatibility? I mean, that's just code for let's just have an excuse to have sex. Are we compatible? What does that mean? If you have a male genitalia and she has female genitalia, they will be compatible. Because the essence of sex is, can you complete the action? Can you do the deed? Which most people, especially youth, have no issue completing the deed. So exactly, sexual compatibility is what, do I like you? Do you like me? Because then we go right back into, what is it? It's relational. Do you care about me as a human? Do I care about you as a human? Because if we care about one another, playing and having fun and touching those parts of our bodies are always pleasurable. Let me take that back. Barring sexual issues that people might have coming from sexual abuse or families and that totally traumatize the idea of having sex and various other things. But regardless if you're married or unmarried, those issues are going to exist. As a matter of fact, Dr. McLeish said, regarding this being an advantage of having sex outside of marriage, she said, actually, those are just advantages of sex. Having them outside of marriage doesn't enhance anything. And many of these, according to that particular sex therapist, says it actually does make it worse because these are things that are supposed to be reserved for marriage, and it's not always true for most people. So the second one, to learn to be a better lover. First of all, 85%, and Dr. McLeish she said studies are, right around there, 80 to 85% of women cannot achieve climax unless there's external stimulation. So what that means is, in order for her to reach climax, very, very, very few women, 15 to 20% of them can reach climax during regular vaginal sex. And so the man has to care about her, involve himself in wanting to please her such that he has to take the time to please her. And how long does it take for the average female to reach climax with some kind of help from him or external stimulation? 20 minutes. Most of the time, especially when I did my shows with the college students on hookup cultures, 20 minutes, a male has to care, or many of them. I'm trying to stutter, as you know, because I'm also thinking about the people that are censoring videos and the words that I have to use. So forgive me if I seem to be stuttering. I don't want the bad guys to shut me down for talking about topics like this. So in order for that to happen, he has to be invested in her pleasure. I want to please her, which means I need to stop myself from having the pleasure until I've pleased her. And many, many times when we're outside of marriage, when we're in the hookup culture, when it's friends with benefits, and these days it's not even friends with benefits, it's just go to a person and hopefully they can remain nameless. It's just so sad. But even if you know each other's names, let's go to the other ones because they all tie together. It's very difficult for me to try to name these separately. So to learn to be a better lover is not something that it should be done outside of marriage, because what happens is if I am trying to learn to be better, what does that say about you? I'm using you to learn how to be a better lover. What is true for males is not true for women. Women don't pride themselves on, I'm a better lover. I'm now more ready for marriage. Quiz any of the females in your life. Ask them, is that something that I needed to go and I needed to practice because I wanted to make sure I was a good lover for my husband one day? Most women won't say that. Now, what women might say is that, well, I was told I should probably do that and see if it's good. But what ends up happening, gender differences, is, again, that the female feels like, well, he got his pleasure. Hopefully she got hers. I talked to many, many girls who said they didn't reach climax during hookups and things. Because again, she has to know her body. She has to know where to direct him. She has to have confidence in how to direct him. And then he has to care enough to delay his own gratification to please her. So many things involved. And if he doesn't, she therefore doesn't feel like, well, this was a great experience in learning how to be a better lover. This was more an experience of, oh, well, okay. Again, now here I am. I'm done and someone else wants to, maybe he'll use me again another time. Or, as I said in one of my previous videos, women will give sex to get love, but men will give love to get sex. Women are not in the relationship to say, I want to have sex. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see that guy so I can have sex. Many of you gentlemen, you may think so. Ask the women around you. They're like, I just want to fall in love. I want someone to love me. I want someone to treasure me. And even if they say, oh no, I don't want to get married, they're still looking for a long-term relationship. They're still looking for someone who will love and treasure them. So the third thing on the list kind of ties into this, which says you have sex outside of marriage to identify sexual problems or dysfunction of the individual. Well, let me ask you this. First of all, what is a sexual problem? She can't have sex. She's frigid. He can't perform the way he should. Those things are often problems because of the lack of commitment. Who are you? Will this person be there tomorrow to help me? The commitment part actually helps the dysfunction, helps to resolve problems, because in addition to me giving you my body, I know that you're there. You've committed to me. What Dr. McLeese actually said is, the truth is that if there are sexual problems or dysfunction, those don't usually appear for decades, many years later. And she said, even if it's not decades, she said it's years before those problems will materialize. So what are you going to do? Have sex with someone for years just to see if this dysfunction manifests? And then what? Then what? You know what? It's a problem. I tried you out. Not good. Moving on. I'm going to find someone who can perform. Sorry, this is how it feels. And again, I talk to hundreds of girls, hundreds of women have come to me. Men have come to me as well, actually. But very few men have, I can't think of any man that has ever come to me and said he felt used. If I do, I'll say it in a future video. But gentlemen, I've had girl after girl after girl, women, even women as old as their 50s, feel like they've been used because they're seeking love. And all they have is sex. And it leaves them empty. So the fourth one here, to reduce stress associated with achieving climax, regardless of marital status, sure, climax releases the oxytocin, which is a cuddle hormone, which is much more pleasurable. And there is a physiological release of stress, but then psychologically, again, come with it other manifestations of stress. Hope I'm not pregnant, hope my pill worked, or what if, all the what ifs. So the stress that may be physiologically released momentarily are momentarily. The stress of knowing that you just had sex outside of marriage is often increased afterwards. And lastly, enhanced emotional connection resulting from having sex. Now that is very important because studies have shown your brain retains in it the memories, and this is not just like visual memories, but the actual memory of every man you've had sex with. And the brain, the human, is seeking to have connection. Did you know, for instance, that when a female first has sex, the woman's body is like, oh, that's my man. She recognizes the semen and actually protects that semen, and it fights off semen that is not that semen, as if, oh, that's not my person. That's not my person. Oh, that semen, because the first one is the one the body says, that's my person. That's why virginity is made by God. It's so much bigger than just stay a virgin. God has created the husband and the wife to have this relationship that will be beautiful, that will connect us. I just heard a woman speak today saying Satan uses sex to pervert things because sex is the time a husband and a wife come closest to being God or being like God. We'll never be God, because we are working with God to create life. Create life. So that's why contraception is so bad. That's why, the idea of condoms and breaking and the semen and God saying, no, that's why infertility has increased. One of the reasons, because we've interrupted that. Wait, you're having sex from someone else. This wasn't your person. The body literally starts fighting off semen that doesn't belong to that first person it protected. The human body is amazing. The human mind, the human soul is even better. If you want enhanced connectivity, give to the person not just your body, your commitment, your soul, your mind, your heart. You're saying, I'm willing to be with you. And then together, that's when you'll learn to experiment with sex. That's when you'll learn each other's bodies. That's when you'll learn what is pleasurable to your husband or your wife. Millions of couples, everybody has their own special thing. They don't need to do everything. They just need to do what's special for that couple. Any experimentation that takes place outside of marriage hinders that. Because what your spouse may end up loving might have been the opposite of something you learned from a boyfriend or a hookup years earlier. The experimentation should take place in the relationship. And that's when it builds the connectivity, it builds the trust, it relaxes and releases the stress. So that's my response. Hope it helped. Continue to send the questions, continue to let me know your thoughts. I love doing everything I can to save marriages, and I want yours to be one of them, even if it's not even happened yet. So you know where to find me. I'm Christine at breakfastwithbacon.com. I'd like to thank you for watching this informational bacon bit. And I'd like to remind you always to live your life sunny side up.